So welcome. In today's episode, we are going to get the spring garden planted. It's time to make that happen. I've got a whole selection of seeds right here beside me, a bunch of little seedlings that I've started. But first and foremost, before we start planting these raised beds, I need to go along and take care of the last little bit of weeds and grass that's popped up. Now, all of our normal viewers know that I take care of this with an herbicide-free method. I just don't want the chemicals out here in the garden around my food. So I use a large propane weeder that shoots a big flame out to go through and take care of all this stuff. I did that about a week and a half or so ago. And now I'll come back with what I call my little pencil weeder. This shoots a small flame out the end, uses a 1-pound cylinder, and I can go hit these little individual weeds that are coming up. What this does is, again, keeps me from using herbicides, keeps me from having to bend over constantly, get on my knees. Well, the older I get, the smarter I want to be about doing that. So let's take care of the weeds and grass in the beds, and then I'm going to show you what all we're going to plant. We had a viewer send us in some seeds as well. We've started some, and we're going to start a few tomato plants with some little indoor grow seed trays that I have in this episode as well. All right, you're not going to be able to see it on camera, but all I got to do is turn on this little valve. And there is probably a 5 or 6 inch flame coming out the end right now, but you just can't hardly see it. And if you look right down in this bed, there's little weeds like this that come right up. I literally just go over them for a split second with this. As soon as I see them start to barely wilt, just like that grass right there, move along. It's dead. You can come back out here later this afternoon, all that grass, all the weeds, everything are dead. So the easiest way that I have found to plant my raised beds is kind of to pull trenches or rows like you do traditional in the ground gardening. And I have an old hoe right here with a thin blade that I find perfect for dragging along, pulling those trenches. I'll drop my seeds in at the proper spacing and then go right back with the same hoe and cover that trench right up. It makes things nice and simple and keeps me again from having to stay bent over for all day out here planting one seed at a time. So right here, I'm just going to pull one straight trench, not very deep at all. So I'm just going to put a couple rows of okra over here. I'm actually kind of just playing around a little with the garden this year because it did so well last year. We still have so much food, canned, preserved, frozen, and just put up. Well, I don't want to waste it, don't want to throw it away. I got a lot of time, energy, and effort in it, so I'm not going to plant very much out here. Although nothing beats fresh vegetables, we're still going to eat what we put up. So I'm just going to do a couple thin rows of okra right here. You'd be shocked at how much this right here will even produce. So anytime we want some fresh okra, we'll just come out here and cut a little off. Then I'll pull some trenches over here. Now I'll take some okra seed. I saved quite a bit from last year myself. But here it is. This is crimson spineless okra seed. It's very tiny. And the way I like to do it is I'll just get me a handful and I'll just start sprinkling it all down this trench. I'm actually putting it in way too thick as far as my spacing goes, but that's okay because not all of it will actually come up. And what I'll do is come back and thin this in another week or two. Once the plants start popping up, I'll find the healthy ones and do the proper spacing that I like. And a lot of people asked, what am I using? This is a local compost blend right here. It's a several part blend that I buy locally, and it has a bunch of bark, some sand, mulch, and the nitrogen in it is chicken manure. Also, a lot of people ask, how often do I top my beds off? Typically I do every other year because this comes quite nitrogen rich, and the first year it can actually burn some plants up. It's better for it to sit. Second year, it's starting to lose a lot of its nutrients. I've done planting on it once, but I find that it still offers enough, and I can always come out here and hit any of this with some granulated fertilizer if I need to. And then by the third year, it's time to top the beds off again. They've done settled, compost has vanished, and we'll put some fresh in. So every other year, I like to go get fresh compost. And now that we have chickens and some other stuff around the property and a wood chipper, I have started building me my own compost pile. Now in the rest of this bed, I've been soaking some beans. I don't know how well that's focusing right there. We'll pour the water off. I have two different types of beans in here. Blue Lake bush beans I have found to be my favorite type of bean. Tiffany loves these. So I'm going to plant them in this bed and a couple other beds because we want quite a few. That's going to be the white beans in there. So the red beans in there are Anastasia beans, and I was actually sent these by a viewer, Crystal. Thank you very much. She sent me quite a few different seed packs of some heirloom seeds from Mary Seeds. And then we're going to plant some other stuff today that I've started from our seed supplier, which is Survival Garden Seeds. They do heirloom, non-GMO type seeds. And then a few other seeds for the garden like corn. Well, I have to source those out locally. So you always want to soak your beans. That really does help them get started. A couple hours is really best. And the blue lake beans, well, they're a bush bean. So what that means is they'll actually bush out and support themselves. A lot of beans are a climbing type bean, like the Anastasias are, I do believe, and they'll need some sort of trellis or fence to climb up. But this is another reason I like the bush beans. Since they just kind of support themselves, they make a great tasting bean. I can just have them out here in the middle of nowhere. Don't have to deal with the trellis or anything else. All right, now that this bed is planted, I'll just lightly come along with this hoe right here and just gently cover everything up. Not trying to go too terribly deep here because of the small seeds like the okra. I personally find that beans don't like being heavily covered up either. Now over here in this bed, I plant my Silver Queen sweet corn, my favorite type of corn on the planet. I've planted Silver King before. It did quite well. It's a little bigger, but that Silver Queen is so sweet and so good to me. There's something about it I love. And you'll notice I have trellises here, or hog panels as we call them. It's, well, hog panel fencing. I have put it in a horizontal position because the bad thing about raised bed gardening is while they have so many positives, the loose soil in them doesn't support corn stalks well. And we get horrible thunderstorms and rain down here, high winds in Florida. So I have found putting these panels about 18 inches above where I'm planting. As the corn grows up, I kind of weave the corn through, and these panels give the stalk support so they don't blow over every time we get one of our afternoon thunderstorms. And as you can see, we're expecting one here in just a little bit. I better get to work. I have also found that I can plant the corn really, really tight in raised beds, especially when they're rich in nitrogen, which corn loves. So out of a bed this size and a little small one over there, I typically get 140 or more ears of corn every single year. Now, being that my compost is not fresh and nitrogen rich this year, what I'll probably do is go get some granulated nitrogen, ammonium nitrate as we call it, and I'll throw it to it a little bit later in the season, especially if my corn starts showing any signs of yellowing. So here is that Silver Queen sweet corn. Again, I like to drop it in a little thick, and I have found very close spacing works perfectly fine when you're using a rich compost like this. And then I'll thin this out as these start coming up a little later on here in a few weeks. So over in this bed, I am planting a couple different styles of zucchini, and I started them in my little seed trays inside a while back. They wound up coming up quite well. Well, most of them did at least. Typically, I start zucchini straight in the ground, but this year I decided to start a little early indoors with my seed tray planters. We'll show these at the end. So I'm going to space these out about 18 to 24 inches. Zucchini makes so much. I wind up giving this away every year. And I also started another style that has a round zucchini on it, so we're going to try those out as well. All right, and here is some round zucchini that I seed started, and you can see every single one of them come up did quite well. Very curious about trying these this year. We love zucchini. All right, and over in this one right here, I'll just space it out to where we'll get 3 squash plants per short row. Space them out about 18 inches. I didn't start any of those. Typically I do squash and zucchini starts by seed, so that should be fine. And a lot of times I'll plant either straight neck or crook neck squash, whatever I can get my hands on. Over here in this bed every year I'll do about 4 cantaloupe plants and allow them to vine out and run across the garden, and you'd be shocked at how many cantaloupes just a few plants like this will make. Now over in this bed, I like to do a mixture of beans, and every other row, do a little extra corn. Now over in these little square beds like this, we're gonna put tomato plants, and that one behind me, we'll fill up with some pepper plants, mainly bell peppers, by far our favorite, and we cook with them all the time. I'm also gonna start some tomatoes inside that was sent out to me. These are beefsteak tomatoes that I'm gonna be putting in here today, and I'll probably pick up a little cherry tomato or two next time I'm in town. Also going to put some basil in over here as well. Something else I had started inside. Now over here in this particular bed, I have those Anastasi beans down here in this little trench so they can come up my trellis that I built out of cattle panels. And on this side, we'll put a few cucumber plants in so they can also climb up a trellis. And if y'all remember, I just planted potato plants in another episode, and they are starting to pop up everywhere. So now it's time to cover everything up. Go ahead and water it in, something I always like to do. And we'll call it good for now. Then we'll go inside and start some more tomato plants, and we're gonna have to wait a little while longer on my pepper plants. They are not large enough to pull out of the containers and start planting. All right, so we are going to take one of my little seed starting trays. This is how I've started all my seeds this year, other than the ones you just see me plant. And we're going to pack this full of some soil. We're going to plant about a dozen tomato plants. I don't need that many more in the garden, but we'll just pick the healthiest ones that come up out of this. All right, so I was sent in some cream sausage tomato. No idea what that is. We're going to try it out. And some yellow pear tomatoes. So these, along with the beefsteak tomatoes out there, which is kind of your big, large red type, and some little cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes that we'll go get in individual plants, that'll more than cover us for all of our tomato needs. I used to hate, I mean hate tomatoes. They're slowly growing on me as I get a little older, and I'm getting to where I enjoy them, especially once I discovered how much better homegrown tomatoes taste than store-bought. Store-bought, pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. All right, I'll just lightly cover these up. Now I'll put one of these little domes on it that has a light underneath, and this essentially makes a small little greenhouse right here. Take one of these cables over here, plug it in. All right, we'll get this plugged in and get the light kicked on. And there it is. We may start a few more seeds here before long, potentially some more pepper seeds, although I have some outside already growing. All right, so I think we're gonna wrap this video up. We'll check back with you a little bit later as they start sprouting out. I still wanna do some garden cleanup, cutting the post off. I've got some lights and stuff to kind of decorate and clean the garden up. So we'll cover that in an upcoming episode, especially once we start getting some germination out there, and I'll keep you along throughout the process the rest of the summer, all the way up to harvest, and then we'll include some cooking and preserving. This is one of our favorite things to do. I highly encourage everybody, grow your own food. Whether you start with a single bucket and just plant you one squash or zucchini plant, learn the process. It's such a rewarding feeling to actually plant something, sow something, and see it produce after you nourish it and take care of it. Not to mention, homegrown food is so much safer and better tasting. As the world gets crazier for lots of reasons, from weather to we just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and we also don't know what's in our food anymore, it's a good skill to learn and have. I highly recommend get some seeds, go out in the yard. It's a good family time experience as well. Plant you a little raised bed. They're easy to build. Plant in buckets, pots, whatever you want to do. And I think you'll really enjoy the process. For all the people that's curious about the little hydroponics that we have inside, still doing great. We got peppers coming inside already, bell and banana peppers. So we'll give you an update on those hydroponics on the next video as well, once we start getting some germination in the garden. Thank y'all for watching. Catch you on the next one.